Former postmaster Alan Bates has told MPs at a committee hearing on the Post Office scandal that people are dying while waiting for compensation. Key figures involved in the tragedy have been giving evidence to members of Parliament today. Mr Bates, who was dramatised in the ITV programme that's brought the miscarriage of justice into the spotlight, said he's also still waiting for financial redress.
After my claim had gone in, and mine's just in the queue like everyone else's, not being dealt with specially at all. But I mean, after mine had gone in, it took them, I think it was 53 days before they asked 3 very simple questions. I mean, it's madness. The whole thing is madness. It's not been driven, and there's no transparency behind it, which is even more frustrating. We do not know what's happening to these cases once they disappear in there.
I mean, I know we like red tape in this country, but I mean, this is insane.
No, it's bogged down. Absolutely bogged down in red tape.
And wrongly convicted former sub-postmistress Jo Hamilton says that if anything criminal is found to have taken place, the people involved should face prosecution.
They convinced me it was my fault, and that kind of, it was before the days of social media, so you felt like I really was alone, and I thought I must have pressed something and reversed something that then doubled the next day, and yeah, I just thought I'd made a hash of it. But when ultimately I went to court and it made the national papers, and people rang me up after seeing the piece in the paper, and I realised it wasn't me, it wasn't just me, then it just makes you so angry that, you know, they literally gaslit me for about 3 years, that, you know, and turned me, well, not into a basket case, but pretty much.
I'm joined now by Labour MP for North Durham, Kevan Jones. Kevan, you have been fighting, you have been striving. You're not one of the people who turned a blind eye or ear, not one of the people who ignored it, one of the people who just was not going to be silenced. How do you feel about the progress or otherwise that has been achieved right now?
Well, we're getting there. I mean, the TV drama has obviously given it a huge boost, and sadly, many things that myself and Alan and other campaigners like James Arbuthnot have known over the years, we're demonstrating that drama. We know about that. What we need to do now, and I think was very evident at the Select Committee today, you just need to ensure that this compensation is speeded up.
And we've just heard about the red tape, and we've just seen the person asking the questions looking absolutely bemused by the length of time taken. Alan Bates also confounded by how long it's all taking. You must feel exactly the same. Is there any way of cutting through the red tape, getting the compensation paid? Because Alan Bates is quite right, isn't he? People are dying while they're waiting.
Well, they are dying. My constituent Tom Brown, who first got me involved in this, sadly passed away before Christmas, before he got justice. I think what came out of today's Select Committee, and Neil Hudgell, who's represented and done an excellent job representing many sub-postmasters, said we've got to cut through this bureaucracy. Myself and James Arbuthnot sit on the advisory board. This is something which we will be pressing, because some of it is, I think, lawyers talking to lawyers, and we just need to cut through that. We are dealing here with human beings who've been through an horrendous situation, and although compensation will never fully compensate them for what they've been through, at least it will make their lives a lot easier.
What about the member of staff from Fujitsu today saying, yes, we are sorry, yes, wrong has been done, and hinting that the company will think about and begin to start setting in motion the mechanics to pay some kind of compensation?
Well, I don't think they had much choice, because if you look at both the original court case and now what's coming out of the inquiry, Fujitsu were involved right from the beginning in this process, knew what was going on, and I think some individuals in Fujitsu clearly were implicated in some of the processes of those prosecutions. So I don't think they've got much choice but to actually recognise that they have a huge responsibility here. And it shouldn't be just the taxpayer which is going to pick up the tab for this massive scandal.
Kevan, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thanks for being on the programme. Let me now bring in PR advisor, formerly to Boris Johnson, Jo Tanner. Jo, thanks very much indeed for joining us. Fujitsu in a hell of a place when it comes to PR, and we know that the Japanese particularly concerned with honour. It's a very vivid concept in their culture. Do you think they've got no choice but to pay up?
Yeah, I think it surprised a lot of people to hear the answer that was given today, but I think it is clearly a question that many have been thinking, and I think it was sort of inevitable the way the question was worded as well to the boss of Fujitsu that was in it, about a moral obligation to be involved in the compensation process. I think it probably is right that they have to play a part in that.
What about PR when it comes to the Post Office? I mean, you wonder whether that institution can ever recover. It's pretty beleaguered anyway, as nobody sends letters anymore anyhow, struggling as it is. Can the Post Office ever recover any semblance of I don't know, honour and decency after this kind of behaviour?
Well, I think this is a really difficult issue, Vanessa. One of the things I've heard from a few people is that this could signal the end of the post office as we know it, because it is such a big issue and there are such big sums involved as well. And as you say about confidence in an organisation, particularly one that, the very point that program goes to, I think that we saw in the ITV drama was that these were individuals that were real pillars of the community that people trusted, and they got caught up obviously in the process and got victimized, and yet they were under a brand that lots of people trusted and believed in, and actually the belief in that has gone. And I would say that, having Kevan Jones on, there are others, as he mentioned, James Arbuthnot, both journalists and MPs who often have a terrible rap. They're often people that are criticised and not trusted or believed in. There have been some incredible folks in those professions that have really tried to help the sub-postmasters and what they've gone through. And I think, it's worth remembering that some of those people that are not necessarily always believed in have genuinely tried to do the right thing too.
Final question, Jo, and I'm not sure this really is strictly speaking PR. I don't know if it really is. This is much more real life and human life. But I've talked about PR for Fujitsu, I've talked about PR for the Post Office. But what about individuals who have lost their good name? Some people will say it's the most precious thing, your health, love of your family or love of your friends, and your good name. And once it's lost, whether it's shown that you were wronged, whether it's shown that you were blameless, whether your innocence is proclaimed, and it's taken a beeping long time for these people to be exonerated of crime they never committed, for God's sake. But anyway, how do you get your good name back? How do you do PR on yourself, on your own life?
Well, I think some of that work is being done by others, I think, with the spotlight that's being shown on this. But for many, there is absolutely nothing, no sum of money can ever compensate them for what they've gone through. We heard the cases of people's children being bullied. We've seen people that have lost their lives. They've not been able to work. They've lost their professions. And I think, that the term PR is almost doing a disservice, I guess, to the sort of the situation that those people have found themselves in. How on earth they can ever feel that justice is done, I think, is incredibly difficult. And I think, we're about to enter, I think, a very interesting year where, with an election campaign starting, we are going to see public contracts, faith in procurement more generally being thrown up as a big issue. And we may well see other people that have been caught up in different situations that have been wrongly affected by things may well hit the spotlight too. Look at the contaminated blood victims who are still waiting for compensation too. There are some incredible things that need to be dealt with, and people need redress. And whether it will ever go far enough, I'm sure it won't, but we've got to start.
And you're quite right, I think, and let's add into that basket of wronged people waiting to be, when you say dealt with, compensated, to be acknowledged, to be helped, to survive this dreadful kind of injustice that's been meted out to them. Absolutely, the Post Office people. Absolutely, as you quite rightly say, the people who suffered from the contaminated blood scandal. Many of them already dead, and many of them suffered for a whole lifetime. But also the Windrush scandal victims, innocent victims who've been so deeply wronged. Most of them lost their homes, lost their good name, lost their way of making a living. Absolutely horrific, and also the Grenfell survivors still waiting and waiting for compensation for something that wasn't their fault and had nothing to do with them. Always a great pleasure to have you on the show, Jo. Thank you very much indeed.